A gurney is a cold thing to lie on when you are sure you are dying. The lights in the hallway were so bright I could barely see, and my contractions had turned into a flat, unbearable pressure. I heard the doctor say the words, "emergency C-section," and I grabbed for Nathan's hand. He was there. Of course he was there. My husband, the accountant, the man who had held my hair back during morning sickness. He squeezed my fingers, leaned close, and smiled. "Don't worry, honey," he said. "If you don't make it, that $2 million policy solves everything." I blinked at him through the pain. My mind was foggy with fear and the drugs they pushed through my IV. I thought it was a strange joke, the kind Nathan made when he was nervous, the kind that fell flat and left you staring at him. But the nurse was already counting down, and the anesthesiologist was putting a mask over my face, and I let the thought go. My daughter needed me to survive. I did survive. The hemorrhage was bad. I lost a lot of blood, and I remember my sister Sarah's face hovering over me, her surgical mask pulled down, whispering that the baby was fine, that she was perfect, that I had to hold on. I held on. And 3 days later, I came home with a pink bundle in my arms and a body that felt hollowed out and rebuilt. If this story moves you, I'd ask you to consider subscribing to Revenger. Sometimes justice needs a witness. The next 3 weeks were a blur of diapers, sleepless nights, and a deep, raw love I had never felt before. Nathan was attentive. He brought me water, changed the baby, told me I was a hero. He said it with a straight face, with a kind smile. April 5th, I was sitting on the couch with my daughter sleeping on my chest. My phone buzzed with a number I did not recognize. I answered it anyway. "Mrs. Vance?" "Yes." "My name is Diane Hartwell. I'm a fraud investigator with Liberty Mutual Insurance. Do you have a few minutes to speak about a life insurance policy?" I shifted the baby in my arms. "I don't have a life insurance policy." "You do," she said. Her voice was flat and professional, but I caught something underneath it. A tightness. A $2 million term policy was submitted 6 months ago, naming you as the insured and your husband, Nathan Vance, as the beneficiary. The premiums, $2,400 per quarter, were paid from a joint bank account in both your names. I stopped breathing. My daughter squirmed, and I pressed her closer. "I'm sorry," I said. "I think you have the wrong person." "I never signed up for that." A pause. I heard her tap a keyboard. "Mrs. Vance, that's why I'm calling. The signature on your policy does not match the signature on your hospital admission forms from March 15th. I've compared them both myself." I looked at the sleeping baby on my chest. I looked at the living room, the toys Nathan had bought, the blanket his mother Linda had knitted. I thought about Nathan's face when he said that joke about the $2 million policy solving everything. I thought about how it wasn't a joke. "It doesn't match," Diane said again, slower this time, as if she wanted me to hear every syllable. "Someone forged your signature, Mrs. Vance." I held my daughter tighter and asked, "Who?" "I don't know yet," Diane said, "but I'm going to find out." I hung up the phone and sat in the dark for a long time. My daughter, Lily, was asleep on my chest. Her tiny fingers curled around my thumb. I could feel her heartbeat against my ribs, small and fast and alive. Nathan was in the living room watching sports highlights. I could hear the murmur of the television, the clink of his beer bottle against the coffee table. He had brought me dinner an hour ago. He had kissed my forehead and told me I was a miracle. 3 weeks ago, he had told me a $2 million policy solved everything. I waited until midnight. Nathan came to bed around 11:30. He kissed my cheek, whispered goodnight, and was snoring within 10 minutes. He always slept hard after a few beers. I lay still and listened to his breathing grow deep and even. At 12:15, I slid out of bed. I put Lily in her bassinet first. She stirred but didn't wake. I pulled on my robe and walked barefoot into the home office we shared. The computer was sleeping. I wiggled the mouse, and the screen lit up with Nathan's desktop background, a photo of us on our wedding day. His passwords were always the same. Lily's name, the year we got married, a combination of both. I tried 3 variations. On the third one, I was in. I started with the bank. I had never paid close attention to our joint account. Nathan handled the finances. He was an accountant. I was an English teacher. It made sense. But that night, I scrolled through every transaction from the past year. There it was, buried in September, a debit of $2,400. ACH withdrawal to Liberty Mutual Insurance. I scrolled further. December, another $2,400. March, another $2,400. 6 months before the C-section, he had been paying for my death. I copied every statement into a folder on the desktop. I emailed them to myself. Then I opened Nathan's browser history. The search terms hit me like a physical blow. Life insurance payout timeline. How long after death does life insurance pay? Maternal mortality statistics, United States. Death during childbirth percentage. He had looked these up on March 10th, 5 days before my emergency C-section. 5 days before he held my hand and told me $2 million solved everything. I took screenshots. I emailed them to myself. Then I went back to the bedroom. Nathan was still snoring. His phone was on the nightstand, screen dark. I picked it up. I knew his passcode, 0714, Lily's birthday. The phone unlocked with a soft click. I opened his text messages. The thread with his mother Linda was pinned to the top. I scrolled past friendly messages about dinner plans and holiday gifts. Then I reached October. October 5th, 2 weeks after the policy was submitted. Nathan, did you take care of it? Linda, yes. I signed while the notary was looking at her paperwork. She never even glanced at it. Nathan, good. Just make sure your handwriting looks different. Linda, I only did what any mother would. I read that line 4 times. I only did what any mother would. She had forged my signature while the notary was distracted. She had signed my name to a document that paid $2 million if I died. I scrolled further. Linda, when does it kick in? Nathan, immediately. If anything happens during the birth, we're set. Linda, she's healthy. It probably won't happen. Nathan, it's a safety net. You never know. I reread the entire thread. Then I took photos of every message with my own phone. I sent the photos to my email. I made a copy on a USB drive from Nathan's desk drawer. At 3 in the morning, I put his phone back on the nightstand. He hadn't stirred. I went back to the office and opened a blank document. I typed out what I knew: dates, amounts, messages, search terms. I saved it to the USB drive. I hid the drive inside a book on my shelf, a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird I had taught every year. Nobody ever looked there. By 4 in the morning, Lily was awake and hungry. I fed her in the rocking chair by the window. The sun was just starting to lighten the sky over the neighbor's roof. Nathan walked into the nursery at 7:30, showered and dressed for work. He leaned down and kissed the top of Lily's head. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Fine," I said. He smiled. "Good. I'll pick up dinner on the way home." He left. I heard his car pull out of the driveway. I had the evidence. But I needed to know if the insurance company would press charges. I called Diane back and asked, "What happens next?" I didn't wait. I called Diane back and held my phone so tight my knuckles went white. She answered on the second ring. "I've done some homework," Diane said. "Can you meet me this afternoon?" I told her I could. Sarah came over to watch Lily. I drove to a coffee shop on South Lamar, the one with the red awning that Nathan and I used to go to on Sundays. I ordered nothing. I sat in a booth by the window and waited. Diane walked in at exactly 2:15. She carried a manila folder thick enough to bend her wrist. She sat across from me and opened it without small talk. "Your hospital admission forms," she said, sliding a piece of paper toward me. "Signed by you on March 15th when you were admitted for the C-section." I looked at my own signature. Neat. Cursive. The loop on the C, the little tail on the final E. Then she placed another document beside it. The policy application, submitted September 20th of last year. I didn't need a magnifying glass. The signature on the policy was wrong. The letters were wider, flatter, like someone had traced a name they didn't own. The loops were too big. The pressure was too heavy. "Someone wrote your name," Diane said, "but it wasn't you." I let that sink in. I had known it. I had seen the texts. But seeing it on paper, side by side, made it real in a different way. Diane pulled out a third sheet. "I also matched the handwriting against your husband's mother. Linda Vance. She signed as a witness on a real estate closing 3 years ago. The letter formations on the policy application match hers." I stared at her. "You found her signature from 3 years ago." "I have access to a lot of databases," Diane said. "This is not my first forgery case." She closed the folder. "Mrs. Vance, what your husband and his mother did is a felony. Insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery of a legal document." She paused. "I have already referred this case to the Travis County District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation." My mouth went dry. "What happens to the policy?" "It's frozen. Effective immediately. Liberty Mutual will not pay a single dollar on this policy ever. Your husband cannot access it, cannot borrow against it, cannot cancel it. It's dead." She slid a business card across the table. "This is the detective assigned to your case. He will contact you within 48 hours. You should also speak to a divorce attorney." I picked up the card. The name was printed in clean black letters. I couldn't focus on it. "He'll need a statement from you," Diane said, "and any evidence you've collected on your own." I thought about the USB drive hidden inside To Kill a Mockingbird, the screenshots, the texts, the bank statements. "I have evidence," I said. She nodded. "Good. Keep it safe. Don't tell anyone you have it." We stood up. Diane shook my hand. She held it a beat longer than necessary. "I'm sorry this happened to you," she said. "But you're doing the right thing." She left. I sat back down and watched the traffic on South Lamar. My phone buzzed. "Nathan," a text message. "Honey, please don't do this. It was just a safety net. You know I love you. Please." I stared at the screen. Safety net. He had searched maternal mortality statistics. He had paid the premiums from our joint account. He had his mother forge my name on a policy that paid out $2 million if I died. A safety net. I didn't respond. Another buzz. "Linda, Anna, I only did what any mother would. Please don't ruin our family. Nathan is a good man." He was scared. We were both scared. Please. I read it twice. I thought about her hand signing my name on a document that valued my life at $2 million if I stopped breathing on an operating table. I put the phone face down on the table. I called Sarah. "I need you to come over," I said. "I'm going to need a witness." Sarah arrived at my door 45 minutes later. She didn't ask questions. She just hugged me, then said, "Tell me what you need." "Dinner at Nathan's parents' house tonight," I said. "I need you there as a witness, and I need you to record everything." Sarah raised an eyebrow but didn't hesitate. She had been a nurse for 12 years. She knew how to stay calm when things went wrong. I called Nathan. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice light. "Your mom invited us for dinner tonight, right? I think we should go. Clear the air." I could hear the relief in his exhale. "That's great, honey. She'll be so happy. I'll pick you up at 6. At 6:03, Nathan pulled into the driveway. He was wearing his favorite blue sweater, the one I bought him for our anniversary 2 years ago. I remembered the date because it was exactly 2 weeks before he opened the life insurance policy. "Ready?" he asked, smiling. I smiled back. "Keely." Sarah followed in her own car. I had given her the USB drive with instructions to wait in the car until I texted her a specific code word: dessert. Nathan's parents lived in a sprawling brick house in Westlake Hills. His father, Richard, was a retired engineer who spent most of his time working on his antique car collection. His mother, Linda, had decorated the house in shades of beige that matched her personality. We sat down at the dining table at 7. Richard said grace. Linda passed the mashed potatoes. The conversation was painfully normal. How was the baby? How was my recovery? How was Nathan's job? Nathan reached over and squeezed my hand. "We're so grateful Hannah pulled through," he said, looking at his mother. "It made us realize what's really important." Linda nodded vigorously. "Family is everything, Hannah. Everything." I set down my fork. "Speaking of family," I said, "I want to talk about the life insurance policy." The room went silent. Nathan's hand froze on the table. Linda's face went pale underneath her foundation. Richard looked confused. "The $2 million policy," I continued, my voice even. "The one you took out on me 6 months ago. The one where you forged my signature." Nathan started to speak, but I held up my hand. "Let me show you something." I pulled out my phone and opened the file. I had recorded my conversation with Diane on April 12th. The audio was crystal clear. The recording began. Diane's voice filled the room. "Mrs. Bance, I've compared the signature on your policy to the one on your hospital admission forms from March 15th. They do not match. The signature on the policy was written by someone else. This is a felony. We are freezing the policy and referring the case to the district attorney for criminal investigation." Nathan's face drained of color. Linda's hands began to tremble. "I'm sorry," Diane's voice continued, "but the legal consequences can be severe. Up to 10 years in prison for insurance fraud. Conspiracy charges for anyone who assisted." I stopped the recording. Richard turned to his wife. "Linda, what is she talking about?" Linda's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. "I have bank statements showing the premiums were paid from our joint account," I said. "I have text messages between you and Nathan discussing how to forge my signature. I have Nathan's search history from March 10th, life insurance payout timeline, and maternal mortality statistics." I looked at Nathan. "A safety net, you said." Nathan's voice cracked. "Hannah, please." "Just listen. I also have the recording of what you said to me in the operating room," I said quietly. "If you don't make it, that $2 million policy solves everything." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "Someone tell me what the hell is going on." Linda broke. "I signed it!" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. I signed her name. Nathan was in trouble. He owed $80,000 to some men. He was scared. He said if she died during childbirth, the policy would cover everything. I thought she was going to die. She was bleeding so much. I was trying to help my son. $80,000. I hadn't known that part. But it didn't matter now. "Sit down, Dad," Nathan said, his voice shaking. "It's not what it sounds like." The front doorbell rang. Richard looked at me. "Who is that?" "I called the police," I said. Nathan stood up. "You what?" "I called the police," I repeated. "And I emailed them every piece of evidence I have. And the texts, the bank statements, the search history, and the recording of your mother admitting to forgery." Linda was sobbing now. "I didn't mean any harm." She was going to die anyway. Sarah walked in from the front door. She had let the officers in. 2 uniformed Austin police officers stood in the doorway. "Nathan Vance," one of them said, "you are under arrest for insurance fraud and conspiracy." They read him his rights. Nathan didn't resist. He just stared at me with an expression I couldn't read. Shock, disbelief, maybe a flicker of something close to hatred. As they handcuffed him, he looked at me and whispered, "I did it for us." I didn't say a word. Richard looked at his wife. "You forged a life insurance policy on my daughter-in-law." Linda couldn't meet his eyes. "I was trying to help Nathan." "You destroyed our family," Richard said. "Get out of my sight." The officers led Nathan out the front door. Linda followed behind, still crying. Richard sat down heavily in his chair and stared at the mashed potatoes growing cold on the table. Sarah put her hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" I looked at the empty chair where Nathan had been sitting. "I will be," I said. "Let's go home." We walked out into the cool April night. The police car was pulling away, its red and blue lights washing over the brick house in silent pulses. I got into Sarah's car and closed the door. Behind me, I could hear Linda screaming through the front door, her voice cracking with desperation. "Hannah, Hannah, please! I only did what any mother would." I didn't turn around. The night Nathan was arrested, I didn't sleep. I sat in the rocking chair in the nursery with Lily in my arms, watching the sunrise paint the walls pink. Sarah stayed on the couch. She didn't ask questions. She just made coffee and handed me a mug at 6047 in the morning. "You meet a lawyer," she said. "I need a divorce lawyer," I said. 2 different things. Sarah pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. "I know a guy. David Chen. He handled my friend's divorce last year. He's a shark." I called David Chen at 8:15 that morning. He answered on the first ring. I told him my name and what had happened at the dinner table. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Get down to my office." "Bring everything you have." So I did. David's office was on the 4th floor of a building downtown. He was maybe 50, with gray hair and reading glasses that he pushed up his nose when he looked at my evidence. Bank statements, text messages, the recording of Diane, Nathan's search history, the forged policy. He spread it all across his desk like a dealer laying out cards. "This is solid," he said. "This is really solid." "What happens next?" I asked. "The DA is handling the criminal side." "That's their case. My job is to make sure you walk away with everything you're owed." He flipped through the bank statements. "Joint account?" "Yes." "Then he paid the premiums with your money too. That's theft. We'll add that to the divorce filing." I nodded. I felt hollow, Not sad, just hollow. David filed the divorce petition the next morning. He also got me a temporary restraining order. Nathan couldn't come within 500 feet of me or Lily. He couldn't contact me. He couldn't access any joint accounts. I signed the papers in David's office at 11,023 in the morning. My hand was steady. 2 days later, I stood in front of a judge for the temporary custody hearing. Nathan wasn't there. He was still in custody, awaiting his arraignment. His lawyer showed up, a thin man with a nervous smile who kept saying, "My client maintains his innocence." The judge looked at the evidence packet David handed up. "Hi." She read it in silence for 3 full minutes. Then she looked at me. "Miss Vance, I'm granting you sole temporary custody of your daughter, full use of the marital home, and freezing all joint assets pending the outcome of the divorce and criminal proceedings." "Thank you, Your Honor," I said. Nathan's lawyer started to object. The judge held up her hand. "Your client conspired to defraud his wife's life insurance company while she was in labor. I'm not inclined to be generous. Next case." I walked out of the courthouse that day with a folded custody order in my purse. Lily was with Sarah at home. I called my sister and said, "We won the first round." "Was there ever any doubt?" she asked. The criminal case moved faster than I expected. Nathan was arraigned on 2 felony counts, insurance fraud and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. The DA's office had the text messages, the bank records, the forged policy, and Diane's testimony. They didn't need much else. Linda was charged with a misdemeanor, forgery. Her lawyer negotiated a deal. She'd plead guilty, serve 2 years of probation, and do 200 hours of community service. No jail time. I found out about the deal from David. He called me on a Tuesday afternoon. "Linda took the plea," he said. "She'll be sentenced next month." "How is she?" I asked. I didn't know why I asked. I didn't care. Remorseful, apparently. But her remorse didn't stop her from signing your name on a $2 million policy. "No," I said, "it didn't." The divorce was finalized on August 1st. I remember the date because it was 103 degrees outside. Sarah came with me to the courthouse. I wore a blue dress I'd bought the week before. It felt like armor. Nathan was still in jail, held without bail. His lawyer appeared on his behalf. David presented our settlement agreement. I got the house. I got full custody. Nathan would pay alimony of $3,500 a month for 5 years. Joint assets were split in my favor to cover the premiums Nathan had stolen from our account. The judge signed the decree. "Divorce granted," she said. "Ms. Vance, you are free." I stood up. I picked up Lily from Sarah's arms. The baby was sleeping, her tiny face relaxed and peaceful. I walked out of the courthouse into the August heat. The sun was so bright I had to squint. Sarah put her hand on my back. "You did it," she said. I looked down at Lily. I thought about Nathan sitting in a cell somewhere, probably still believing he could talk his way out of this. I thought about Linda in her beige house, serving probation for nearly ending my life. "I did," I said. I didn't look back, not once. The courthouse door stayed closed behind me, and I walked toward the car with my daughter in my arms and the summer sun on my face. The sentencing hearing was set for October 15. I marked it on my calendar with a blue pen. I knew the date. I knew the time. I just didn't know what to wear. The district attorney's office called me the week before. They said Nathan had agreed to a plea, no trial, no jury. He would plead guilty to insurance fraud and conspiracy. Linda had already pleaded to a misdemeanor forgery charge. Her sentencing would come later. I sat in the living room with Lily asleep on my chest. The house felt wrong now. Every room held a memory I didn't want. The kitchen, where Nathan made coffee. The hallway where he kissed my forehead. The office, where he planned my death. I called a real estate agent the next morning. The courthouse on October 15 was cold and gray. Sarah held Lily while I walked through the metal detectors alone. I wore a navy blazer and black slacks. I wanted to look professional. I wanted to look like someone who had already moved on. The courtroom was small, wooden benches, fluorescent lights. Nathan stood at the table in an orange jumpsuit with his wrists cuffed in front of him. He looked thinner. His eyes were hollow. He turned and saw me. I held his gaze. No smile. No nod. I just watched. The judge spoke for a long time. He read the charges. He read the evidence. He talked about the violation of trust. He talked about the victim impact statement I had submitted. Then he sentenced Nathan to 3 years in state prison. Nathan's father sat in the front row. He did not cry. He did not move. He just stared at his son like he was looking at a stranger. I thought I would feel something. Relief. Closure. Justice. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of being the one who survived. Tired of carrying the weight of what he tried to do. Linda's hearing was 2 weeks later. She stood in front of the same judge and cried. She said she was only trying to help her son. She said she never wanted anyone to get hurt. The judge sentenced her to 2 years probation and 400 hours of community service. 400 hours for planning my death. I did not cry. I did not yell. I just wrote the date in my notebook and closed it. The house sold in November, $450,000. The money went into a new account with only my name on it. I packed everything by myself. Sarah offered to help. I let her hold Lily while I filled the boxes. I gave away the bed Nathan and I shared. I gave away the dining table where we ate dinner. I kept the rocking chair from Lily's nursery and my grandmother's china. That was it. Everything else went to Goodwill. The town I chose was 2 hours away, small, quiet, a main street with a coffee shop and a library, a school that needed an English teacher. I found a rental house with a big backyard and a porch swing. I moved on a Saturday. Sarah drove the U-Haul. I followed with Lily in the back seat. The sun was setting when we pulled into the driveway. The sky was orange and pink. My new job started on Monday. I taught sophomore English at a high school with 500 students. The kids were loud and messy and ordinary. I loved them. I joined a single mothers group at the local community center. The women brought snacks and let their kids play on a mat. They asked about my daughter. They asked about my ex-husband. I told them the truth. Not all of it, but enough. One of them handed me a cup of coffee and said, "You survived. That's what matters." I nodded. I picked up Lily and held her close. She grabbed my finger with her whole hand. Her grip was strong. I looked out the window at the street I now lived on. The trees were bare. The air was cold. A man walked his dog past my house. A woman jogged with a stroller. Normal people. Normal lives. I was one of them now. I did not check the news for updates about Nathan. I did not wonder what Linda was doing with her 400 hours. I did not look up his release date. I already knew it anyway. 3 years. I would have 3 years of quiet. That night, I put Lily to bed in her new room. The walls were painted pale yellow. A mobile of paper stars hung above her crib. She fell asleep with her fist curled by her cheek. I stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. I thought about the emergency room, the bright lights, the hollow feeling of Nathan squeezing my hand and talking about money. I thought about the phone call from Diane, the texts between Nathan and his mother, the USB drive hidden in a book. I thought about the judge's voice. 3 years. I closed the door to Lily's room. I walked down the hall to my own bedroom. The house was quiet. The floorboards creaked under my feet. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the box still unpacked on the floor. Inside was a framed photo of my mother. She had died when I was 20. I had not thought about her in months. I took the photo out and placed it on the nightstand. I touched the glass. You would have held her, I said. You would have loved her. The room was silent. The wind outside brushed the window. I lay down and pulled the blanket over my shoulders. The house was mine. The town was mine. The life I was building was mine. I could feel the future like a weight I was finally strong enough to carry. The first birthday party was small. Just me, Sarah, and Lily in the backyard of the rental house. Sarah had hung streamers from the porch swing, pink and white. Lily sat in her high chair with a smear of cake on her cheek, babbling at the mobile of paper stars above her head. I watched her grab at the air with her tiny fingers. She had no idea what a birthday meant. She had no idea that a year ago her father had sat in a waiting room hoping I would bleed out on an operating table. She never would know. That was the gift I had given her. Sarah brought out a second candle. She lit it and held it up. "Make a wish," she said. I closed my eyes. But I didn't wish for anything. I had everything I needed. The party ended at 3. Sarah packed up the leftover cake and kissed Lily's forehead. "I'll see you next weekend," she said. Then she hugged me hard and whispered, "You did it!" "Oh, really did it?" I nodded, because I had. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat on the porch swing. The street was quiet. The neighbors were inside with their own families. I could hear the distant hum of a car on the main road, the rustle of leaves in the wind. I pulled out my phone and opened the web browser. I typed Nathan's name into the search bar. I did it once a month. Not because I cared. Because I needed to know. The first result was a prison roster. Inmate Nathan Vance. Sentence began October 15, 2023. Earliest release date October 15, 2026. I scrolled down. No photos. No news articles. Just his name and a Department of Corrections number. 2 years left inside. I closed the tab. Then I typed Linda's name. She had completed her probation. 400 hours of community service. 2 years of supervised release. The article was short, buried on page 12 of the local paper. Linda Vance receives probation for forgery conspiracy. I read it once, then put the phone down. I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just the quiet weight of a closed door. The support group met every Tuesday night in the basement of the community center. There were 9 of us, single mothers mostly. Some divorced, some widowed, one who had never married. We sat in a circle on folding chairs and drank bad coffee from a plastic urn. I had told them the truth, not all of it, but enough. I told them my ex-husband had tried to collect a life insurance policy after my C-section. I watched their faces shift from sympathy to disbelief to quiet rage on my behalf. The group leader, a woman named Helen, had been through her own nightmare. Her husband cleaned out their savings and left her with 3 kids and a mortgage. She looked at me across the circle and said, "You survived. That's the part they don't understand. You survived, and now you get to choose. I chose this small town 2 hours from the house where I almost died. This rental house with the big backyard and the porch swing. This classroom full of sophomores who didn't know my history and didn't need to. This quiet life I had built, brick by brick, with my own hands. Lily turned one on March 15, the same day I had been wheeled into that cold OR. The same day Nathan had squeezed my hand and told me the policy solved everything. I took her to the park that morning. She sat in the grass and pulled up handfuls of it, laughing at the feel of the blade slipping through her fingers. I sat on the bench and watched her. A woman jogged past and smiled at us. I smiled back. I did not think about Nathan. I did not think about Linda. I thought about the way the sun looked through the trees, the way Lily's laugh sounded in the open air, the way the future stretched ahead of us, clean and unmarked. Diane sent me a card, a simple white envelope with my name on it. Inside was a handwritten note. I think about you sometimes. I'm glad you're okay. I kept it in the drawer of my nightstand under the photo of my mother. Sarah came for dinner that weekend. She brought a bottle of wine and a story about a patient who had tried to escape the hospital in a wheelchair. We laughed until our sides hurt. After Lily was asleep, we sat on the porch and watched the stars come out. "Does it ever get easier?" Sarah asked. "It already did," I said. She nodded. She didn't ask more. That was the thing about Sarah. She knew when to push and when to just sit beside me. I thought about my mother. She had died at 49. A stroke, sudden and final. I had spent years after that feeling like the world was unstable, like everything could crumble if I looked away. This time felt different, not because I was stronger, because I had seen the worst someone could do to me, and I had walked away from it. The house was quiet when I finally went to bed. Lily was asleep in her room, the pale yellow walls lit by the soft glow of her nightlight. I stood in her doorway and watched her breathe. Her chest rose and fell, her fingers curled around the edge of her blanket. I had given her that. Safety, peace, a name that her father's actions could never touch. I closed the door and walked to my own room. The photo of my mother was still on the nightstand. I touched the glass the way I did every night. "She's fine," I whispered. "We're both fine." The wind brushed the window. The house settled around me. I lay down and closed my eyes, and for the first time in a year, I did not dream of the operating room. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe.